There is something that happens in the quiet moments, when the noise of the day finally settles and you are left alone with your own thoughts. Something rises up from somewhere deep inside you, and it doesn't always feel like peace. Sometimes it feels like a question. Sometimes it feels like a fear that has been following you for longer than you want to admit. And the question it asks is not always spoken out loud, but you feel it. You feel it in the way you lie awake at night, in the way you scroll past other people's lives looking for something you can't quite name, in the way you sometimes feel completely invisible in a room full of people. The question underneath all of it is this: am I alone? And more than that, has God forgotten about me? I want to speak to that place in you today, not with cliches, not with something that sounds good but dissolves the moment you walk back into the hard parts of your life. I want to speak to that place with something true, something that reaches down past the surface of your circumstances and touches the core of what you are actually going through. You are not abandoned. Let me say that again, because I know how quickly those words can pass through us without landing. You are not abandoned, not by the God who formed you, not by the love that has been pursuing you since before you took your first breath, not in the season you are in right now, not in the struggle you have been carrying, not in the waiting, not in the silence, not in the confusion. You are not abandoned. But I also know that knowing something and feeling it are two very different things. And I think that's important to say, because sometimes we make people feel like they've done something wrong when they don't feel the presence of God in a moment. As if feelings are the only evidence of truth, as if the fact that it hurts means something must be missing, must be broken, must be your fault. That is not what I'm here to tell you. What I want to help you understand is that there is a difference between feeling alone and being alone. There is a distance between the way a season feels and what is actually true about that season. And sometimes, some of the most important things God has ever done in and through a human life happened in moments that looked and felt like abandonment from the outside, but were anything but that on the inside, on the eternal level, on the level that truly matters. So let's start there. Let's start with the feeling itself, the feeling that you have been left, the feeling that your prayers are hitting a ceiling and coming back down unanswered, the feeling that everyone around you seems to be moving forward while you stand still, the feeling that you are somehow disqualified, somehow too late, somehow too much or not enough. That feeling is real. I'm not going to minimize it or spiritualize it away. I'm going to sit right here in it with you for a moment, because that's what love does. It doesn't immediately rush to fix what it first needs to feel. And I think what you need more than anything right now is to know that someone sees you, really sees you, not the version of you that shows up put together, not the version that says fine when someone asks how you're doing, but the real you, the tired one, the hopeful one who has been disappointed one too many times but somehow still hasn't given up completely, the one who is reading this or listening to this right now, because something in you is still reaching. That reaching is everything. Hold on to that. God sees that reaching, and it is not going unnoticed. It is not going unmet. Even when you cannot see how, even when the evidence in front of you seems to point in a completely different direction, your reaching is being met. Your hunger is being seen. Your heart, that bruised, beautiful, still beating heart of yours, is known. You are not abandoned. Now I want to talk about what abandonment actually looks like versus what it feels like, because I think we often confuse the two. Abandonment is when someone leaves and does not return. Abandonment is when a door closes and no hand ever opens it again. Abandonment is when a relationship ends not just in feeling but in fact, in function, in presence. But what most of us have experienced, what most of us have called abandonment, is not actually that. What most of us have experienced is silence. And silence is not the same thing as absence. What most of us have experienced is waiting. And waiting is not the same thing as being forgotten. What most of us have experienced is a season of not being able to feel what we know to be true. And that is not abandonment. That is growth. That is depth. That is the sacred and sometimes painful process of a life being built rather than simply handed something. I know that might not be easy to hear right now. I know that if you are in a really hard season, the last thing you want is someone telling you that this is growth, because growth doesn't always feel like becoming something. Sometimes it feels like falling apart. Sometimes it feels like losing the things you were sure were supposed to stay. Sometimes it feels like standing in the middle of a story you do not understand, in a chapter you would not have chosen, wondering how any of this could possibly be leading somewhere good. But here is what I know, and I say this not because it sounds beautiful, but because I have seen it. I have lived parts of it, and I have seen it in the lives of people who have walked through fire and come out the other side not burned, but refined. I have seen it in people who lost everything and found that what remained was exactly what mattered. I have seen it in people who were sure they were at the end and discovered they were actually at the beginning of something they never could have imagined. God does not waste seasons, not one of them. Not the season that broke you open, not the season that felt like starting over from scratch, not the season where you cried more than you thought a person could cry and still be standing, not the season of silence, not the season of waiting, not the season where the thing you prayed for didn't come the way you expected it to come, or didn't come at all, or came in a form that made you wonder if you were paying attention to the right things. God does not waste any of it, and the fact that you are still here, the fact that you are still breathing, still hoping, still reaching, that is not an accident. That is not random. That is not coincidence. That is evidence that something has been sustaining you even when you couldn't name it, even when you couldn't feel it, even when you were convinced that you were completely on your own. You were not then, you are not now. Let me tell you something about the nature of love, real love, the kind that is not contingent on your behavior or your performance or your ability to hold yourself together. Real love doesn't announce itself in every moment. It doesn't require that you feel it constantly in order to be constantly present. Real love, enduring love, the kind that was here before you were born and will be here long after everything you think defines you has fallen away. That love doesn't operate on your timeline. It doesn't arrive when it is convenient for you to receive it. It is already here. It has always been here. And I know that can be frustrating to hear when you are in a moment of need, when you are crying out and feeling like the answer isn't coming, when you are doing everything you know to do and the circumstances are not shifting. I know that can feel like the words of someone who doesn't understand your specific situation, your specific pain, the specific way your life has not gone according to plan. But I want you to hear this through that frustration, through that disappointment, through whatever protective distance you may have put between yourself and the idea of being loved by something bigger than what you can see. You are held, right now, in this moment. You are held. Not because you have earned it, not because you have been consistent enough or faithful enough or good enough, but because being held is not something you earn. It is something you are. It is the nature of your existence. It is the truth underneath every layer of fear and self-doubt and disappointment you have accumulated over the years. Underneath all of that, you are held, you are loved, you are seen, you are known, and you are not abandoned. Now I want to talk about what to do with this, because I believe strongly that truth without something to hold on to, truth without something to practice and return to, can drift. And I don't want what you take from this to drift. I want it to settle into you. I want it to become something you come back to on the hard days, something you reach for when the old familiar feeling of being forgotten starts to creep back in. So let's talk about what it means to live from this place, to actually operate from the belief that you are not abandoned, not just to say it, not just to feel it in moments of warmth and connection, but to build your daily life on it, to let it be the thing that shapes how you respond when things fall apart, the thing that shapes how you treat yourself when you make mistakes, the thing that shapes how you show up for others even when you yourself are depleted. Because here is the thing about truly knowing that you are not alone. It changes how you move. It changes how you risk. It changes how you love. When you know that you are being held, that you are not going to fall past a certain point, that there is a net beneath the thing that scares you. You can take the step. You can have the conversation. You can release the thing that was never yours to carry. You can stop performing and start being. And that is where life actually opens up. I want to talk about something that a lot of people don't bring up in conversations like this, and that is the role of loneliness. Not the spiritual kind, not the feeling of God's absence, but the very human, very real experience of loneliness that comes from feeling disconnected from other people, from feeling like you don't belong anywhere, from feeling like you have somehow missed the boat on the relationships and the community and the sense of being known that you see other people seem to have found so effortlessly. That loneliness is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is not evidence that you are too broken or too complicated or too much to be truly loved by another person. It is not punishment. It is not the universe confirming your worst fears about yourself. Loneliness is one of the most honest feelings a human being can have. It is the heart naming what it needs. It is the soul saying, I was made for connection, and I have not found enough of it yet. That is a sacred ache. That is your humanity speaking, and I want you to honor it rather than shame yourself for feeling it. You were made for love. You were made for belonging. You were made to be known and to know others. And if you haven't found the depth of that yet, if your connections have been surface level or painful or few, that is not a reflection of your worth. That is a reflection of a broken world that has not yet caught up to what you deserve. And in the meantime, in the space between where you are and where you are going, you are not alone. You are accompanied. You are in the presence of something that does not tire of you, that does not find you too intense or too needy or too much, that does not need you to pretend you are fine when you are not fine, that is completely at ease with all of your complexity and all of your contradictions and all of the ways you are still a work in progress. That kind of love exists for you. It is not theoretical. It is not a nice idea. It is the very ground beneath your feet. You are not abandoned. Let me talk about the season of waiting, because I think this is where most of us are when the feeling of abandonment hits hardest. It's not usually in the acute crisis. It's in the long, quiet stretch after the crisis, when the dust has settled and you expected things to have moved and they haven't. When you've done the praying and the trusting and the releasing and you look around and the landscape still looks the same. The waiting season is brutal in a very specific way. It asks you to sustain hope without immediate evidence. It asks you to keep believing in something you cannot yet see. It asks you to hold a tension that every reasonable part of your mind wants to collapse. The tension between what is and what you know is possible. And the longer the wait goes, the harder that tension becomes. Because every day that passes without change can start to feel like confirmation that change isn't coming. Every prayer that seems to go unanswered can start to feel like evidence that you're not being heard. Every person who moves forward while you stand still can feel like a reminder of everything you haven't yet become. I want to gently challenge that story, not because it isn't real, but because it isn't complete. Because there is another way to read the waiting season that most of us never choose. Not because we don't want to, but because it requires something of us that feels counterintuitive when we're hurting. It requires trust. Real trust. Not the kind you declare when things are going well and it's easy, but the kind that shows up in the waiting. The kind that says, I don't understand this. I don't see how this is working for my good. I can't feel you right now. But I am choosing to believe that this is not the end of my story, that something is happening even when I cannot see it, that the silence is not emptiness but fullness, fullness of something being formed and prepared and made ready, in me, for me, around me. That kind of trust is not passive. It is one of the most active things a person can do. It takes everything you have, and it is holy. It is one of the most holy things I can imagine a human being doing. Choosing to trust when everything in you wants to give up. Choosing to believe that you are loved when everything in your circumstances seems to suggest otherwise. Choosing to stay in the waiting with your heart open rather than closing it off to protect yourself. That is courage. That is faith in its most elemental form. And you have it in you. I know you do, because you are here. And the very fact that you are here, still listening, still open, still willing to let something in, tells me that your faith has not run out. It may be bruised, it may be exhausted, it may look nothing like it did before all of this, but it is here, and it is enough. You are not abandoned. I want to spend some time now talking about what you carry, because most of us who feel abandoned, who feel forgotten, who feel like we are navigating this life without the kind of support we needed, most of us are also carrying something heavy, something we have been carrying for a long time, something we may not have even named yet. It might be grief, the grief of something you lost that you haven't fully let yourself mourn. A relationship, a version of yourself, a dream that didn't come true, a family you deserved but didn't get. Grief has a way of disguising itself as other things, as anger, as numbness, as a persistent low-grade sadness you can't quite explain. If that sounds familiar, I want to give you permission to grieve. Real grief, full grief, not the kind you do quickly so you can get back to being functional, but the kind that honors what was lost. It might be shame, the shame of decisions you made that you can't undo, the shame of ways you've fallen short of who you wanted to be, the shame of things that were done to you that somehow got wired in your body as if they were your fault. Shame is one of the heaviest things a person can carry, and one of the most isolating, because shame tells you that if people knew the real you, they would leave. It tells you that you are uniquely disqualified from being fully loved, and it makes you hide, and the hiding makes you feel more alone, and the more alone you feel, the more abandoned you feel. And the cycle goes on. But here is what I know about shame. It cannot survive being seen. It cannot survive being named. It loses its power the moment you stop carrying it in secret. The moment you let yourself be known in the places where you have been most afraid to be known. You do not have to carry this alone. Not the grief, not the shame, not the exhaustion, not the disappointment, not the weight of a life that has not gone the way you planned. You were never meant to carry it alone. And the God who is with you right now, in this moment, is not waiting for you to get yourself together before drawing near. That love draws near to the broken places. It is drawn to the honest places. It meets you exactly where you are, not where you think you should be. Lay it down, not because it doesn't matter, but because you weren't designed to carry it. You are not abandoned. Let's talk about who you are, not what you've done or what you've been through or what you're afraid you might become, but who you actually are, at the core of you. Underneath all the labels and the roles and the masks and the measures of productivity and performance and approval, you are a person who was put here on purpose, not by accident, not as a cosmic afterthought, but with intention, with a specific design, with something to offer that only you can offer in the particular way that you can offer it. Your personality is not a problem to be managed. Your sensitivity is not a liability to be apologized for. Your complexity is not evidence that you are difficult. These are features. These are the precise and particular things that make you uniquely you. And the story that you are too much, or not enough, or somehow fundamentally flawed in a way that cannot be redeemed, that is not your story. That is the story that fear tells. That is the story that shame tells. That is the story that every hard thing you've been through has tried to write on top of who you actually are. But it is not the truth. The truth is that you are loved. Deeply, specifically, unchangeably loved. Not the version of you that performs well. Not the version of you that has it together. The full version. The messy version. The version that is sitting in whatever room you are sitting in right now. Feeling whatever you are feeling. Wondering if any of this can possibly be true for someone like you. It is true for you, especially for you. You are not abandoned. I want to close with this, and I want you to really let it in if you can. This is not the end of your story. Whatever you are in right now, whatever has brought you to this place, whatever you have been through that has made you question whether you are loved or seen or known or carried, this is not the end. You are in the middle of something. You may not be able to see what it is. You may not be able to understand the shape of it yet, but you are not at the end. And the God who has been with you through every chapter of this story so far, including the chapters you are not proud of, including the chapters that nearly broke you, including the chapters you wouldn't choose to repeat, that same presence is with you now, in this chapter, in this season, in this moment. You are not forgotten. You are not too far gone. You are not beyond reach. You are not beyond healing. You are not beyond love. You are here, and being here, choosing to still be open, choosing to still reach, choosing to still believe that something good is possible for your life. That is brave. That is extraordinary. That is the kind of thing that moves the heart of God. So, wherever you're going, when you finish listening to this, carry this with you. not as a feeling that might fade by tomorrow, but as a knowing, a deep, settled, returning to able knowing. You are not abandoned. God is with you. And that is not a platitude. That is the truest thing about your life. Go live from that place.